The president is set to impose new sales taxes on imports, and Wall Street is bracing for the impact.
It's time for reciprocity, and it's time for a president to take historic change to do what's right for the American people.
The president is adamant his tariffs will encourage manufacturing in the U.S. and ultimately boost the economy.
When we look at this stuff, Rich, I get it. I'll just tell you a little anecdote, right? I'll tell you a little anecdote. I'm out with my brother. Everybody knows Kevin helps out on the show. He comes on quite a bit. The founder of the Gulf of America. We're taking care of some stuff. Had to stop for gas. We go to get gas and talking as we usually talk. We're talking about the White House, talking about something Trump had just. I don't even remember what we were saying, but we're talking about, oh, it's so great. Trump did this. Trump did that. A guy who works at the gas station comes up to us. It was not a Wawa. Can't say I was stepping out on Wawa for a moment there, momentary lapse in judgment. I know. But he comes up to us and he says, well, wait a minute. I hear I'm dead serious this happened. He goes, wait a minute. I hear Trump is going to put these tariffs in. That means prices are going to go up. Yeah. And I said, well, yeah, the prices are going to go up maybe for a time-free period, but we're talking about the foreign goods, and it's going to increase the amount of jobs and the type of jobs you can get in the United States, which means you're going to have more money. And he just kind of looks at me. He's like, but I thought Trump was going to make the prices go down. And this is a guy who works at a gas station. He understands gas prices. He understands how that works. He's not the owner, but he has a general understanding. And I said that to him. He's like, well, I don't know if that's a good idea. We got China owning all our debt. That means we owe them a lot of favors. I mean, these people are not stupid. These people are busy, but they are not stupid. Right. And so I'm sitting there thinking, man, this guy's making some really good points. So, Rich, when we hear that sentiment, when I'm getting that sentiment out in the wild, what are some of the things that you're looking at, whether it's in polling or just in your general tracking of public opinion regarding these tariffs? First of all, let's break it down for a second. Do you think the tariffs are a good thing, and why is President Trump doing this in the first place? He says it's to benefit the MAGA faithful and to bring back those manufacturing jobs to places like the Rust Belt, to places like Appalachia. But at the same time, we're also hearing people within that population group be worried about the rise in prices.
Yeah, people have to remember what you just said is very important. People are busy, but they're not dumb. And I do feel like I can answer all of that, right, including whether tariffs are a good thing, by just simply saying this. The White House is ceding a big part of this messaging war to the media, and there's a much better way for them to address this. They have to remember that Trump was elected. I mean, there are peripheral issues, but he was elected from the two I's, inflation and immigration. And yes, he's done a lot at the border. It's just an LA Times article about how it's basically, come down to a trickle across the border. What used to be a flood is now a trickle. But people have a habit of forgetting what is fixed and moving on. You have to remind them. And when you're doing something like this, and Reagan did this when he implemented his economic program, you have to walk people through this stuff, and you have to hold their hand a little bit through it. And I don't think the White House is doing that. And we could get into that in a bit more detail. But it is a good thing. And that's why you're seeing the president of Sean, come on. When was the last time you heard the president of UAW come out and praise a Republican president? They don't do that, Jack. You've been around a long time. I have been around a long time. United Auto Workers do not come out and support and praise a Republican president, but they are because they know that the agenda in the long run is the right thing. Same thing goes for farmers in Iowa and in the Midwest and the Plains states. All of these people are going to be affected. American-made X, Y, or Z, they support it. And when we talk about polling, it is different in the Rust Belt and the Mid-Atlantic than it is in the rest of the country. And you have to be very careful when most of your voters are not politicos. They're average people, working class people, and average people who don't follow this stuff on a 24/7 basis, not because they wouldn't, but because they can't. They're busy paying their bills and making a living, taking care of their families. You have to be careful that what they hear is not only from the Washington Post or CNN or whatever. And it's not like they're reading them, but when you have, how narratives work. I shouldn't have to explain this to people. And the bottom line is very simple, Jack. You can explain this to them in their language, which I feel like the White House is not doing. It's just very textbook. It happens to all presidents, they get in the White House, they get a little bit isolated a little bit. You just explain to them something very simple. It's the same thing. The political class basically gave the country a bunch of drugs and they got everybody addicted to these drugs. Was it good for them in the long run? No, it wasn't. And getting off of it, is it going to hurt? Is there going to be some pain when you break your addiction in the beginning? Yes. But in the long run, are you
Withdrawals.
going to be healthier? Yes. I mean, this is how speak their language, talk in terms they understand. And right. I mean, it's the same thing. We're addicted to foreign goods, Jack, and it's not good for our body. And explain it to them
Well,
like
you know
that.
what, Rich? We had Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent here on the program last week, and that's exactly what he said. He
Yeah,
said,
there you
"Look, we exchanged the American dream for cheap foreign baubles. Big screen TVs and these baubles. We got this gadget, you got that gadget, but you look at where you live." And you look at your town and you look how it's completely devastated. And it doesn't take you don't even drive far from any major city to find these towns that have just been completely devastated. I'm not just talking about in the Rust Belt or Appalachia. They're everywhere. We were in the Northeast the other day. We saw it. You can go anywhere in the country and see this stuff. Just signs of American devastation that are all over the place. But I will say, though, when you drive through the Rust Belt right now, particularly parts of Ohio, it looks like they lost a war. And in a sense, they kind of did.
I was just it does because they did. They lost an economic war can sometimes cause as much pain. I actually had an economist once equate this to me, and he said, actually, casualties in war, they're, especially the dead, they're gone, Jack, and that's it. And they're not there to suffer through the consequences and the aftermath. Economic casualties are worse in a sense because they are, and now they have a lifetime of pain that they have to suffer and go through. It's like the scars of people who have mental injuries from conflict, right? It's almost the same thing. But again, I feel like the White House, and there's really just no way to sugarcoat this, I feel like they need a Bannon-like figure to sit with the president for 10 or 15 minutes every day, whatever it may take, get everybody else out of the Oval Office because they don't understand the Trump coalition. Let's cut through it and let's just talk frank here, and to ground him.
Rich, we've spent every day here on the program going through how what President Trump is doing is fundamentally restructuring the global economy. No more of this idea where American IP will be outsourced to the Lao Beijing of China, where they're going to be the global factory, and the people in the middle, right, the multinational firms, the IP holders, Silicon Valley is a huge part of this as well. They're the ones making billions and possibly even trillions of dollars, honestly, if you look at it market on market, off of this entire situation. But who gets screwed over? The people in the middle. Why does Detroit look the way that it does? And Chicago, and oh, by the way, why does Shanghai and Shenzhen and Ningbo and all these cities in China, these port cities, why do they look the way they do? Because that's your money. That's your money that went over there. That's where all the wealth is going. It was a systematic wealth transfer from the American middle class, which has seen the bottom absolutely fall out from under them over to places like China and other of these third world export outsourced jobs. So yes, there's gonna be, look, it's Rich, it's like what you said before. When you're getting off an addiction, you're gonna have to go through withdrawal. You're gonna have to take your medicine. And this is going to be the medicine, but it's going to be better on the other end. Talk to me through some other messaging that you've seen regarding this.
Well, it's also a national security issue. And he doesn't ever phrase it like this, but it should be. If you remember COVID, for example, okay, during COVID, we had issues finding various medications, even the ingredients to medications, and it impacted antibiotics and other drugs. If you look, of course, pharmaceutical companies and the industry in general is on that list. Then that absolutely should be a selling point. By the way, so are rare earth minerals, and so are components in ICBMs, the stuff that makes up microchips, right? All of this absolutely falls under the purview of national security. And during COVID, if the Chinese wanted to stick it to us, Jack, they could have. If there's another epidemic, and we needed certain drugs like antibiotics or whatever it may be, they could stick it to us. They could hurt us because they have control over our supply chain in areas where we need to make sure we are prepared in the event of a catastrophe. Once upon a time, America had it all. America had all of it, but we do not anymore. And it's based on this idea, and this is what globalism believes, that if we outsource our wealth to other areas around the world, we can stabilize the world. That we had World War II, we had World War I, I mean, dating back to the 20th century, because other countries weren't economically stable. And basically, folks, the Chinese know what to do with your money better than you do. And they can make the world a better place, and they can distribute prosperity, and that's going to stabilize everything, and we'll all hold hands and sing kumbaya. And that is not what happened with outsourcing our wealth. The only thing we did outsource are our dreams, the integrity that comes with work, right? Our communities, the solidarity of our communities. We were talking about this before the show. You can drive through basically any state in the mid-Atlantic and the Midwest, and it's not just isolated in those areas, it's everywhere. And you can find hollowed out communities. Well, with that came broken families, Jack. With that came addictions. With that came joining gangs. I mean, there's so many, there are so many, I can't even say secondary, but direct consequences of these policies